Welcome to Aquarium 911, where I help you with your aquarium problems. Today, we're going to solve kind of another beginner problem. This might seem like a repeat, but I think it's kind of important because we can get into this potential conundrum when it comes to lighting. Today's email is from Lisa. She's relatively new to the hobby, but let's dive into the email and start cracking down on this bad boy. Hi Bentley, I'm new to the hobby, about 2 months in. This email is from about 2 months ago, so 4 months now. I have a lot going on right now. 2 10-gallon tanks, 2 20-gallon tanks. All tanks are moderately planted. I am up to my neck in Amazon packages of boxes of lights, chemicals, fertilizers, CO2 chambers, and I'm about ready to lose my mind. It is really easy to get yourself deep into this hobby so fast. And it is really easy also to get overwhelmed. You're not alone. I guarantee you many, we could do this for a long time, hobbyists have felt the exact same way you're feeling when they got into this hobby at first. I even felt a little overwhelmed when I came back to this hobby, but that was because, kind of like you, I probably dived in a little harder than I needed to because I was just way too eager to get going. Without trying to get too overwhelmed, I'll start simple. I have Fluval Nanos for my 10 gallons. When I logged into the app, I was so overwhelmed, I didn't even know what to do. I also have a Fluval 3.0 for my 30 gallons. 30 or 20? You told me 20, but you're saying 30. I'm assuming that's a typo and you mean your 20 gallons, but maybe you've got like 29s or 30s. Whatever, that part doesn't actually matter that much. Same thing, I have the lights on there, but I haven't tried to program it because I don't understand the confusion with the app settings. I will say that I do have a big series called the Ultimate Guide that helps kind of teach a bit more of those lights and how to use them, but we'll answer your question directly here too, okay? But just in case you need more details, Lisa, feel free to check out the Ultimate Guides. I will have a link to the playlist down in the description of this video, and I'll try to put it up in the corner here too while I'm editing, okay? Is there a simple way to set it and forget it? Yes, that is called auto mode. Your best friend for set it and forget it is auto mode. So for you, and honestly, probably 95% of hobbyists, like even several of my tanks, are just on auto mode. It is phenomenal, powerful, and simple. But it does take a little bit getting used to, and that can get overwhelming, but we'll make that easy, okay? Another question. I have other lights that I bought on Amazon for my 10 gallons. I bought these first, and they are WRGB. So that means it's white, red, green, blue in the LED pattern, as opposed to necessarily like individual colors like we're about to discuss. They were about the same price as the Fluval Nano. I'm realizing that the Fluval Nano doesn't have WRGB spectrum. And so they have pinks and other colors, but not green. I am totally lost. Does that mean I don't want to use the Fluval? And I want to use the other brand? The other brand is also called the Aquascaping WRGB lights on Amazon. Which brand is better for my 10 gallons? So here's the thing. Better is all in the eye of the beholder. You don't necessarily need WRGB to be a full spectrum light. And the Fluval Nano and all the Fluval lights in general are full spectrum. WRGB tends to also be full spectrum as well. And what does that mean? Full spectrum just means that the light covers all of the light range of a usable light by plants. That's it. Usually the full spectrum we also refer to as like the visible spectrum, but for our purposes here, and especially in aquarium lighting, when they refer to full spectrum, that just means it covers the entirety of usable light by plants. And that's all we're looking for. As long as the light is full spectrum, it doesn't actually matter the individual colors of the LEDs, as long as it is full spectrum, and usually it has some white and some other stuff tied in. There is a little visual difference to our eyes, and this is where we start looking at what's called the Kelvin scale. So if a light is like 5600 K, that means it's 5600 Kelvin. All Kelvin measures is how our human eyes perceive light. It's technically slightly more than that, but that's really all you need to know about what the Kelvin scale is for light. What does that mean for plants? Goose egg. Nothing. It's about how we view it and how we like that view. So as an example, if you were to look at this tank here, right, you might see, depending on what time you're looking at it, it might have a slightly yellowish cast to the light, or a warmer tone to the light. That would be typically anywhere under 5600 Kelvin. But the difference in the light between that tank and this tank, as far as the plants are concerned, nothing. So all that really comes down to is what looks most visually appealing to you. I'm not particularly familiar with the exact light that you're using, as far as I haven't had them hands-on. I've looked at them before on the internet and stuff like that, but I haven't been hands-on with them. Here's what I would say. We want whichever light we feel we have the most control over. And let me explain why. The fluval light has a good amount of control. I'm not particularly used to the exact controlling mechanism in that one, but whatever one allows us to control raising the intensity, so dimming it down basically. Because what we're going to try and do is pick a setting, and we're going to make some small adjustments over time, either up or down, depending on what we see our plants and how algae occurs in the aquarium. So for both of your fluval nanos, and honestly, your full-size fluval as well, on the 20 or 30 gallons, whichever one it is, we can basically use the same setting to start, and then as we make adjustments, we'll do it individually per tank. Here's the biggest thing. I'm assuming, as you're newer to the hobby, most of your plants are the ones that most people will call like beginner-friendly or easy plants. And really what that translates to is they have a lower light demand. They don't need a ton of light in order to have success and look good. These are things like Crypts, Anubias, maybe you've got some Java Fern. These plants aren't necessarily all easy to keep healthy, but they aren't super demanding, so it is more likely to be easy to keep. And I hope that differentiation makes sense. Here's how I would start. With auto mode, okay, so you have sunrise and sunset. These are just timings. All it is they're going to work in, as you would expect. Sunrise will start at 0, whatever your off point is, and over the course of however long you set that sunrise, it will slowly increase the light until it reaches the maximum, which is whatever you set in your daylight setting. And then for sunset, it's the opposite, right? It starts at that maximum setting and slowly comes down over that period of time. I personally like to have my sunrises and sunsets be about an hour and a half long. It's slow, it's gradual, it's a little more relaxed for my fish, but that's because I keep rainbow fish and they're known to be a little jumpy. If you have something with a lid, you might consider bringing that period down, but I've just found it to be pretty successful for me. So what I would suggest is either make your sunrise and sunset an hour or an hour and a half long each. And then for your daylight setting, let's start with that being 5 or 6 hours long. If you're doing 1 hour, make it 6. If you're doing 1.5 hour sunrise sunset, let's try 5 to start. What we want to make sure we're doing is not overloading the tank with too much light and risking a chance of an algae bloom or some level of breakout where we have a bunch of algae and then we got to go fix a new problem. We want to try and do this slow and steady and easy, but depending on how much light you're currently using, aka how long that light is on, this is our photo period, by the way, is the technical term we want to use here, will depend on whether or not you make some small adjustments. If you've already had your light on for 8+ hours a day, then you probably can do the 6 hour daylight and 1.5 hour each sunrise, sunset, and not really care very much. For the daylight setting, here is what I would do. I would start with 35% pure white, 35% cool white, 30% warm white, 25% pink, and 3 to 5%, your choice, blue. Why are we doing blue so low? I have found in my experience that increased level of blue light tends to cause more likely algae outbreaks. However, scientifically speaking, more blue light should not specifically cause algae. It's usually something more complex than that. But in my experience, whenever I have my blue light a bit higher, I'm more likely to get algae, and especially, specifically, blackbeard algae. So I personally choose to keep my blue light fairly low. I also like a kind of warmer cast of light. So if the light looks too yellowish to you, then what I would do is dial down the red as low as you're dialing down the blue. That'll take away a bit of that yellow cast if you don't visually like how that looks, okay? Why these settings? Most of your tanks aren't super tall, and despite the fact that the Nano is a smaller light, it still does have a good amount of power. So if we start at a lower setting, what we can do is monitor all the plants and see how they're doing over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if we see that they're having any problems, especially if they're starting to get, like, let's say you have a stem plant, okay? If you're starting to see, like, maybe each leaf at first was this far apart, and all of a sudden it comes this far apart, and I'll do this really exaggerated, right? We'll come up to the camera. Maybe they were started out like this far apart, and now they're coming this far apart between each set of leaves. That's what we call being leggy, and usually that means that the plant is trying to reach for more light. So we can dial our light up a little bit. And the only thing I would adjust is just the whites. So if you are seeing plants starting to grow, trying to reach and grow way taller, let's increase each white setting by 5% and then watch it for another 2 weeks or so. We want to give the plants time to adjust to this light as we make those changes and see how they're progressing. If you're not seeing any problems and you're also not seeing any algae, leave it as is. You have set it, now just forget it, right? But if you've increased the light and you're not seeing issues with the plants, but you're seeing more algae, then what we're going to do is decrease, and we'll start by decreasing each of the whites 5%. Easy peasy. We will eventually take the pink down if we need to keep going downward, but I don't think you're going to have to with this base light setting. As for the other lights, here's one thing you can do. Either A, you can use those if you feel that they have as much control and they just visually look better to your eyes. Then it's just a matter of dialing in a similar setting for as long as you want to keep the lights on. I would suggest somewhere around 8 hours a day, 7, maybe a little longer. But if you're trying to be more starter, you might look at like 6 to 8 hours as the range of time for lights on if you're not using something that has like a ramp up and ramp down like the sunrise and sunset that isn't with fluval lights, okay? Why are we limiting light like this? Because like, we're at Bentley, daylight, it's on for 16 hours in the summer or whatever. Most plants aren't completely underwater the whole time, and they're typically in such large water systems that it's a lot less likely to have algae to the way that it occurs in a fish tank. I mean, like you can see, I'm dealing with a giant ball of algae down here right now, right? So I'm making adjustments in my own tanks because algae happens. Whether you've been doing this for 20 years, 10 years, 2 months, you are going to deal with algae. Just make sure that when you make your adjustments, try to do them one at a time and go slow and steady. Plants are pretty durable and can handle this, and algae reacts surprisingly fast. When we start making positive change, we start seeing results faster than you might think. So let's start slow, try to make it easy, and from there, if you have any other questions, Lisa, please do not hesitate to reach out back to me via email and just title it with like, update, right? Because that's one of the things that lets me know, like, hey, you've seen this already, here's what's going on now. What kind of changes have we seen? Have we seen positive results? Have we seen negative results? And then we'll make some adjustments if we need to and keep working from there. For the rest of you, thank you for coming along for this little ride. In general, like I try to use this advice pretty commonly when it comes to lighting, and that there can be a lot of things that are really confusing about lights, but in the end, when you understand like a couple of key principles at like a very high level, it makes it so much easier. So I try my best to explain it at like the highest, most basic level, so that hopefully it's easy to digest and understand like, oh, the Kelvin on my light almost doesn't matter whatsoever. It's just about how I look at it and whether I think it looks cool or not. Got it, right? The plants don't care, right? Things like that. Or what does full spectrum mean? All those kind of things. And there's lots of other things like lumens and wattage, and there's all sorts of these old rules you're going to see all over the internet. You basically can ignore almost all of that in the grand scheme of things, because deep down, most of the plants we're keeping don't require really crazy powerful lights. And if you're keeping really difficult plants that need those crazy powerful lights, you probably know all of this stuff already. So we just keep it easy. We think about the things that matter the most to us. Realistically, it comes down to intensity, how powerful light is, photoperiod, how long the light is on. Ignore lumens, ignore Kelvin. Those things don't matter as much. They don't matter to the plants. Full spectrum just tells us this is using everything that a plant can possibly use, sometimes even more, as opposed to being like, it's just a blue light or it's just a red light, as an example, okay? If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like if you learned something new, or maybe you have your own tip when it comes to lighting based on your experience in your aquarium. leave it in the comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. I love when I get your feedback. People have learned a lesson. One of my personal favorite goals is every time I can help even a single person with a video, it makes my day. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. That like, comment, subscribe. It is literally the easiest, completely free way to tell old Papa YouTube, hey, I like what this person is doing, and someone else might too. That's how the algorithm gods start suggesting us to other people. We grow, and we don't have to eventually do things like get sponsorships trying to sell you video games that have nothing to do with fish, or a mattress, or cereal, or whatever weird stuff that almost every other YouTuber is trying to shove down your throat these days. If you need my help, an Aquarium 911 of your own, down in the description below is a link to the original Let Me Help You video that will give you all the details that I need to get you in the queue and for me to help you with your own personalized video. I will warn you, if you're looking at like a fish disease, I do have kind of a backup and it takes me some time to get to these, so I'm not the best person for fish disease. But if it's like algae, plants, other kind of equipment related questions, those I'm usually really good at being helpful with and hopefully can solve whatever problems you're dealing with. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching and stay awesome.